The wind shifted through the pines, carrying a faint, mournful whine that made David's chest tighten. Ahead, a German shepherd stood rigid, ears pricked, eyes fixed on a shadowed path winding deep into the forest. He had seen the dog before, near the edges of town, always alone, always silent. But tonight, something was different. Its gaze wasn't just alert, it was urgent, almost pleading. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, David stepped forward, the underbrush snapping underfoot. What he was about to find would change everything. If you're drawn to stories like this, consider liking and subscribing. You won't want to miss the full journey. David's boots crunched over damp pine needles as he followed the German shepherd deeper into the forest. The dog moved with a purpose, weaving between gnarled trunks and fallen branches, as if it knew exactly where it was going. The moonlight barely pierced the dense canopy above, casting flickering shadows that danced like specters across the undergrowth. Every now and then, the dog paused, ears twitching, nose in the air, then turned back to make sure he was still following. He swallowed, tasting the metallic tang of adrenaline. The forest had always made him uneasy, even as a child when his father would take him hunting here. It was too quiet tonight. No rustle of small animals, no calls of distant owls. Just the soft rasp of his own breathing, and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. "Okay," he whispered to himself, forcing his voice to be calm. "Where are you taking me?" The dog didn't answer, of course, but its stare, unwavering and intense, seemed to communicate more than words ever could. There was urgency in its eyes, a weight that pressed against the corners of David's mind. He remembered the rumors that had floated through town for years, people disappearing in these woods, never to be seen again. He shook off the thought, blaming the cold, the dark, and his overactive imagination. And yet, as he pressed on, an inexplicable dread settled in his stomach, curling around his spine like a living thing. Half an hour into the forest, David's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it, unwilling to break the fragile connection forming between him and the dog. His hand hovered near the screen, though curiosity gnawing at him. It was a text from his sister, Rachel. "Call me now. Something's wrong." He swallowed hard and tucked the phone away. There would be time for that later. Right now, the dog's behavior demanded attention. It had stopped again, tail stiff, standing at the edge of a small clearing. Moonlight filtered in here, revealing the rough outline of an old cabin, half hidden by overgrown brambles. Its windows were dark, the walls warped and blackened with age. David's heart skipped. He hadn't expected to find anything, certainly not a cabin that looked abandoned for decades. The dog crept forward, nose to the ground, then stopped at the door, sitting rigidly as if guarding something. "You live here?" he asked the dog, half in jest. "Or hiding someone?" The dog's low growl sent a shiver down his spine. David circled the cabin cautiously. The wooden door was hanging on a single rusted hinge. He glanced back at the dog, which stared unblinkingly, ears flat. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open. It squealed on its hinges, revealing the cabin's interior. The air smelled of mildew and decay, the floor littered with broken furniture and shards of glass. Dust motes swirled in the narrow shafts of moonlight, giving the place an ethereal, almost unreal glow. A sound made him freeze, soft, uneven breathing coming from the corner. David's pulse hammered in his ears. He moved closer, the dog following silently, nose twitching. There, huddled in the shadows, was a figure, a child, pale, filthy, trembling. The boy's eyes were wide with fear, and for a moment, David felt his own heart break. "It's okay," David whispered, kneeling slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The child flinched but didn't move. The dog nudged his leg gently, a protective gesture that somehow eased the tension. David reached out, and the boy's small hand met his. Shaking, cold, David's mind raced. Who could have left a child here? And why? A sudden noise made him spin. From the shadows, a man emerged, broad-shouldered, mid-40s, with a crooked smile and eyes that didn't reflect warmth. Well, the man said, voice smooth, almost charming. "Looks like someone found my little secret." David instinctively moved between the man and the child. "Who are you?" he demanded. What are you doing here? The man chuckled, taking a deliberate step closer. I could ask you the same thing, but I already know. You're curious. You can't help yourself. His eyes glinted in the moonlight, a mixture of amusement and menace. Curiosity can be dangerous, can't it? David's mind scrambled. This man wasn't just threatening. There was intelligence behind his cruelty. He weighed his options, considering escape, confrontation, and negotiation. But one glance at the child, whose wide eyes mirrored David's own fear, made his decision. You don't get to scare him, David said, voice trembling but firm. Leave. The man raised an eyebrow, still smiling. Oh, I'm not here to scare him. I'm here to teach him a lesson. And perhaps you too, if you stick around. The German shepherd growled low in its throat, the sound vibrating through the cabin. The man's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a crack in his composed facade. Good dog. David muttered under his breath, grateful for the silent ally. For a tense moment, the man assessed the situation. Then, with a shrug that was all too casual, he stepped back into the shadows. Enjoy your little adventure, mister. David, he said, eyes never leaving the man. David, the man repeated, we'll meet again. And then he was gone, swallowed by the night as effortlessly as a shadow merging with darkness. David exhaled shakily, turning to the child. It's okay now. You're safe. The boy nodded, tears streaking through dirt on his cheeks. He comes back sometimes, the child whispered. Every night. I can't leave. David felt a chill. Then we'll leave together. Right now. Outside, the forest seemed quieter, the wind softer. Yet the oppressive sense of dread lingered, a reminder that this night was far from over. He glanced down at the dog, which wagged its tail once, then set off down a narrower path. It was guiding them, leading them somewhere important. David followed, keeping a protective hand near the boy. His mind churned with questions. Who was that man? Why was the child left here? And most importantly, how deep did this nightmare go? As they moved deeper into the forest, David realized something he hadn't before. The German shepherd wasn't just a guide. It was a guardian, and perhaps the only thing standing between them and something far worse than abandonment. Branches scratched his arms, and the boy clung to his side. Each step seemed heavier than the last, weighed down by unspoken terror. Somewhere behind them, a branch snapped, but when David spun around, nothing was there, just the dense black of the forest, seemingly waiting. By the time they reached a small stream that cut through the woods, the boy was shivering violently. David stripped his own jacket and wrapped it around him. The dog drank from the stream, ears alert, watching the shadows. David's chest ached, not just from the cold, but from the magnitude of what he had stumbled into. He knew this was only the beginning. The cabin, the man, the child, it was all connected. And the forest, alive and secretive, was waiting to reveal more. The path ahead narrowed, the trees pressing close like silent sentinels. The dog padded ahead, unwavering, as if sensing David's hesitation. He tightened his grip on the boy's hand, whispering, "We're almost there, just a little further." In that moment, David understood the truth of the forest's hold on him. Curiosity had led him here, but courage, and perhaps luck, would determine whether they all made it out alive. And something in the pit of his stomach told him that the real horror, the real heartbreak, was yet to come. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the forest became. Moonlight struggled to break through the thick canopy, leaving them in a muted world of shapes and movement. The air smelled damp and earthy, mixed with something sharper, smoke perhaps, or decay. David tightened his grip on the boy's small hand, feeling the tremor that ran through him, and kept his eyes on the German shepherd, which moved with uncanny certainty. They reached a small clearing where the forest floor gave way to patches of wild grass and moss-covered stones. The dog stopped at the edge, sniffing the air, ears flattened, tail stiff. David could see faint tracks in the mud. Footprints, too deep to be recent, but unmistakable. Someone or something had been here waiting. "Stay close," he whispered. The boy didn't respond. His lips were pressed together, eyes wide and unblinking. Fear radiated off him like heat, but David couldn't turn back now. Not when the forest was already revealing pieces of its dark puzzle. The path narrowed again, twisting between two massive oak trees. Their branches knotted together like skeletal fingers. The dog hesitated, letting out a soft whine, then padded forward as if signaling David to follow. A faint light appeared ahead, orange and flickering, like a candle struggling against the wind. David approached cautiously, senses sharp, every nerve on edge. The clearing revealed an old stone well, moss clinging to its walls, water black and still within. Around it, scattered remnants of firewood and discarded clothing suggested human presence. The boy stiffened, whispering, "He comes here too?" David crouched to the boy's level. "Who comes here?" "The man!" The boy replied, voice barely audible. He watches me sometimes. When I try to sleep, when I try to hide. He knows." A shiver ran down David's spine. The man's calculated cruelty was worse than he had imagined. This wasn't just a random act of terror. It was methodical, controlling, predatory. Suddenly, the dog barked sharply, low and menacing. David's eyes darted to the edge of the clearing, and there he saw movement, a figure emerging from the shadows. Not the same man from the cabin, but someone equally disturbing. Mid-30s, wiry, with eyes that darted and flinched at the slightest sound. There was tension in his posture, desperation. David instinctively stepped between the boy and the figure. "Who are you?" he demanded, voice firm. The man raised his hands. "Wait! Don't." His voice broke mid-sentence, and for a moment, he looked almost human. "I can help. I can explain." David didn't relax. Explain what? That he's been keeping a child in the woods? That he's terrifying him every night? The man flinched at the accusation, then glanced nervously over his shoulder. "It's not what you think. He's dangerous. Yes, but I'm trapped too. You don't understand." "Then start talking," David said. Every instinct screamed that this man's story was riddled with lies, but he had no other choice. They needed answers. The man hesitated, then took a tentative step forward. "The child, the boy, he's important to both of us. The other man, he's not just cruel. He's part of something bigger. Something people in this town have buried for years." David's chest tightened. "Bigger than what? What do you mean?" The man swallowed. "Power. Money. Secrets. People who think they're untouchable. The boy, he knows things. He saw things he shouldn't have. And now he's a threat." David's stomach churned. The boy had seen something, witnessed something, that made him a target. The weight of responsibility pressed down like a stone. "And you?" David asked, "Where do you fit into this?" The man's eyes flickered with a strange mix of guilt and fear. "I tried to stop it once, but I couldn't. They're everywhere. Even now they're watching. If we're seen together, we're both gone. The only reason I followed him tonight, the only reason I'm still alive, is because the dog leads me. It knows." David's gaze shifted to the German shepherd, whose eyes glinted in the moonlight, unwavering and alert. The dog had been more than a guide. It had been a protector, silently orchestrating their path through danger. "What do we do?" David asked, voice barely above a whisper. The man looked around nervously. "We hide. We wait. We figure out who's loyal and who's not. There's one person who might help. Someone who owes me a favor. But it's risky." David considered the options. They could hide in the woods, but for how long? The man's story suggested a network of danger far beyond the forest. Each choice seemed like a trap, each path a gamble with lives at stake. Suddenly, the boy whimpered and pointed toward the trees. "He's here," he said, voice trembling. David followed his gaze and froze. Emerging from the shadows, the first man, the one from the cabin, stepped into the clearing. His face was calm, almost serene, but his eyes burned with intent. He scanned the group and finally settled on the boy. "Looking for someone?" he said softly, almost mockingly. David stepped forward, blocking the boy. "Stay back." The man smiled, and it was a cold, deliberate thing. "Ah, David, I see you made new friends." "How touching." But this isn't your fight. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand enough, David said. I know what you're doing is wrong, and I won't let you hurt him. The man tilted his head. And yet, here you are, following a dog into the woods, intruding on things far bigger than you. Curiosity, bravery, foolishness. Call it what you want, it doesn't matter. The outcome is inevitable. David felt anger and fear twist together inside him. Every instinct screamed to act, to protect the boy, but reason told him caution was survival. One wrong move, and they were finished. The wiry man stepped forward again, glancing between David and the boy. I can distract him, he whispered, but only for a moment. You need to run. Go. Now. David's mind raced. Could he trust this man? He didn't have a choice. The first man's presence left no alternatives. He nodded sharply. Do it. In a blur, the wiry man darted toward the shadows, making noise to draw attention. The first man's eyes snapped toward him, but he moved slower than expected, calculating, almost amused. David grabbed the boy and bolted, following the German shepherd as it led them along a narrow path hidden by undergrowth. Branches whipped at their faces, mud coated their boots, but they didn't stop. Behind them, the man's laughter echoed through the trees, a soft, chilling sound that made David's blood run cold. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a small glade where the moonlight pooled in silver patches. The boy collapsed on the ground, trembling. David knelt beside him, pulling him close, feeling the shiver pass through his small frame. The dog lay at their side, alert and tense, ears flicking toward every sound. David realized something crucial. The boy had survived this far not by luck, but because of the dog. Its instincts, intelligence, and loyalty had guided them safely through danger. The wiry man appeared again, cautiously, from a tree line. We can't stay here long, he said. He knows the forest better than we do. He'll track us eventually. We need a plan. A real one. David looked at the boy, at the dog, and then at the man. We do what we have to, he said. No mistakes. No hesitations. We survive tonight, and then we find the truth. The full truth. The boy nodded weakly, shivering. David's chest ached at the sight, but he drew strength from the child's courage, from the dog's unwavering presence. He realized that this night would mark a turning point, not just for them, but for the secrets buried in the town, in the forest, and in the hearts of men who thought themselves untouchable. Somewhere deeper in the woods, a branch snapped, but this time David didn't flinch. He had learned to trust the instincts that had brought them this far. The German shepherd's eyes met his, and he understood. The dog was leading them not just to safety, but toward revelation, toward justice, toward heartbreak, and maybe, if they survived, redemption. The forest closed around them again, dark and alive, but David's resolve hardened. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The forest seemed endless, shadows twisting and stretching as if alive. David led the boy, the wiry man trailing cautiously, while the German shepherd guided their path. Every rustle of leaves, every distant owl cry, set David's nerves on edge. The boy clung to him, trembling, but there was determination in his wide, fearful eyes. He had survived so far, and he wasn't going to stop now. They arrived at a narrow ravine, a hidden part of the forest few in town knew existed. The dog stopped at the edge, ears alert, nose twitching. David crouched beside the boy. "We're close," he whispered. "Just a little further." The wiry man's voice was tense. "Beyond this, it's dangerous. The other man, he's not alone. He has connections. People will do anything to keep their secrets buried." David nodded. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Protect the boy. Find the truth. Survive. Nothing else mattered. The German shepherd padded forward, and David followed, stepping carefully along the narrow ledge. The ravine opened into a small clearing, and there, in the dim moonlight, stood a derelict barn. Its walls were warped and blackened, doors barely hanging on rusty hinges. A faint light flickered inside, and the smell of smoke and something sour hit David immediately. The wiry man whispered, "That's where it all ends. That's where the truth waits." David's pulse quickened. The dog let out a soft growl and moved to the door, pawing at it insistently. He exchanged a glance with the boy. The boy nodded slightly, gathering courage. Together, they pushed the door open. Inside, the barn was a scene of chaos frozen in time. Broken furniture, scattered papers, and personal belongings lay everywhere. But at the far end, shackled to a beam, was a woman, pale, gaunt, eyes wide with fear and recognition. Her mouth moved silently as David approached. "Mom?" the boy whispered, voice breaking. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "David." Her gaze shifted to the boy, and she pulled in a ragged breath. "You came for him. Thank God." David froze. This was the boy's mother, or so it seemed, but the realization hit him with a weight he hadn't anticipated. He turned to the wiry man. "He told the truth?" The man nodded grimly. "She's a reason the other man does what he does. It's complicated. He's part of the town's powerful elite. The woman you see, he blames her for something that isn't entirely her fault. The boy, he's collateral." David's mind raced. The child's suffering, the danger, the secrecy. It was all tied to a betrayal long buried, and the man from the cabin had twisted it into something monstrous. The moral lines blurred, leaving no clear villain or hero, just a web of human flaws and desperate choices. A shadow moved near the doorway, and David stiffened. The first man had returned, flanked by two others. His smile was cold, predatory. "So predictable," he said. "Following the dog, protecting the boy. I hoped you'd give me a little more challenge." The German shepherd growled, hackles raised. But David noticed something new, a shift in the man's expression. He paused, just long enough for the wiry man to step forward, voice steady. "You've underestimated them," he said. "Underestimated me. Underestimated him. And underestimated that dog." The first man's smile faltered. "You? A coward hiding in shadows?" "No," the wiry man said. "Someone who knows what fear really means. Someone who's seen the consequences of your cruelty firsthand. And someone who won't let it continue." Chaos erupted. The first man lunged, but the wiry man moved first, shoving him back and giving David a split second to pull the boy to safety. The dog attacked, teeth snapping at the man's legs, forcing him to retreat. Shouts echoed, the barn filling with the sound of struggle and panicked movement. David grabbed the boy and ran toward the mother, unshackling her as fast as he could. Tears streamed down her face as she wrapped the boy in her arms. "You're safe now," she whispered. "It's over." But David knew it wasn't over. Not fully. The other men were still outside, and the first man's influence in the town was far-reaching. They had escaped one nightmare, only to step into another. The wiry man returned, panting. "We can't stay. We need to move fast. There's a safe place, a friend who owes me a favor. They'll protect us, at least for a while." David nodded. He glanced at the dog, whose eyes gleamed with quiet understanding. Without the animal, none of this would have been possible. It had guided them through fear, protected them, and silently chosen its allies. As they left the barn, the forest seemed to close around them. The first man's figure disappeared behind the trees, a shadow among shadows, but David could feel his presence lingering. A reminder that evil rarely disappears entirely. The group moved cautiously, eventually reaching a hidden cabin where they would be safe, at least temporarily. Inside, the boy clung to his mother, exhausted but relieved. David sank onto a chair, chest heaving, the adrenaline slowly ebbing. The wiry man sat across from him. "You did good," he said quietly. "Better than I expected." David shook his head. "We didn't do it alone. The dog had saved us." The man smiled faintly. "Yes, the dog chose well. And sometimes that's all you can hope for. Sometimes the smallest choices make the biggest difference." Hours passed, and the forest outside remained silent. David watched the boy sleeping beside his mother, his heart heavy but resolute. The first man's threat lingered, a dark reminder that justice and safety were fragile, fleeting things. Finally, he stepped outside, letting the night air wash over him. The German shepherd sat nearby, watching. David knelt and ran his hand over its head. "You're incredible," he murmured. "Thank you for everything." The dog looked up, eyes calm, almost knowing, and nudged his hand. David realized that, in a world full of cruelty and betrayal, the bond between them, the trust, loyalty, and courage, was something unbreakable. He returned inside, closing the door on the forest, the shadows, the threats. For now, the boy and his mother were safe. The first man's power remained, but David understood something crucial. Even in darkness, small acts of bravery and compassion could carve a path toward redemption. The night ended quietly, a fragile peace settling over the cabin. The boy's mother whispered her thanks. The wiry man kept watch, and David sat silently, feeling the weight of everything they had endured. Outside, the forest breathed, alive with secrets. But for the first time that night, David felt hope, not the naive kind, but the kind born from survival, courage, and the unspoken bond between humans and the creatures who choose to guide them. Some wounds wouldn't heal. Some betrayals couldn't be undone. But as the first light of dawn filtered through the trees, David understood that even heartbreak could lead to connection, to purpose, and to the quiet strength needed to face whatever came next. The German shepherd rested at the door, eyes still watchful, ears twitching at the slightest sound. David knelt beside it once more, whispering, "We made it, together." And for a moment, in that fragile morning light, the weight of fear lifted. The forest had taken much, revealed much, and scarred them all, but it also reminded them of something vital. Courage, loyalty, and love could endure even in the darkest of places. The journey was far from over, but for now, they had each other, and sometimes that was enough.